The arrival of the alien girl. The city lights flickered beneath the night sky as Jake Carter, a young Earth diplomat, stood in front of the towering intergalactic embassy. Tonight was special. An alien delegation was arriving for the first time in human history. Jake adjusted his tie, trying to hide his nerves. He had seen alien creatures on the news before, but this was different. He would meet one face to face. His job was to represent Earth, to welcome them, and to ensure peace between species. As he waited, a sudden humming sound filled the air. The sky above shimmered, and a sleek silver spaceship materialized out of nowhere, descending smoothly onto the embassy's landing pad. The ship had no visible engines, no thrusters, just pure advanced technology beyond human understanding. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and a group of tall, elegant beings stepped out. They had shimmering silver skin, glowing blue eyes, and moved with a graceful stillness that made them look almost like living statues. But among them, one stood out. She was different. Her features were delicate, almost human-like, but too perfect, like a sculpture carved by the universe itself. She had long, flowing silver hair that shimmered under the lights. Her deep violet eyes studied everything around her with a sharp curiosity, like she was analyzing the entire world in a single glance. Jake felt a strange chill down his spine as she stepped forward, her movements precise and almost calculated. She was scanning him, reading him, studying him. "Welcome to Earth, honored guests," Jake said, trying to sound professional. The alien woman tilted her head slightly, as if processing his words. Then she spoke, her voice smooth and strangely melodic. "I am Syra. I am here to understand your species." Jake nodded. "And I am here to help you." Sarah took another step closer. "I have studied your people, your history, your biology, but I still do not understand one thing." Jake frowned. "And what is that?" Zyra's glowing violet eyes locked onto his. "Earthlings really do that to reproduce. Can I try?" For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Jake blinked. He must have misheard. Did she just ask what he thought she did? His mind raced. What? Zyra didn't even blink. "I have studied human reproduction. It is inefficient, messy, strange, but fascinating. Our species does not reproduce this way. We clone. We are made, not born." Jake coughed awkwardly, his brain short-circuiting. Was this some kind of alien prank? Well, you see, it's not just that. It's complicated. Explain. Oh no. Jake felt heat rise to his face. How was he supposed to explain this to a completely logical, emotionless alien scientist? It's more than just a process. Humans have emotions, love, connections, relationships. Zyra blinked. Emotions, love, explain those as well. Jake ran a hand through his hair. This was going to be a long night. The other aliens watched silently, their expressions unreadable. Jake suddenly realized something. This wasn't just curiosity. This was a test. Meanwhile, above the Earth, inside the alien mothership, a group of high-ranking beings monitored Syra's interactions through a shimmering holographic screen. Their leader, an aged alien with piercing white eyes, observed with interest. "She is already engaging in emotional discussion," one of the observers said. The leader narrowed his eyes. "Human emotions are dangerous. If she begins to feel, we may have to intervene." Back on Earth, Syra was still watching Jake, waiting for an answer. Jake swallowed hard. He needed to be careful. One wrong word, and he could accidentally start an intergalactic incident. Well, he started slowly, choosing his words carefully. Humans don't just reproduce for survival. We have relationships. We care about each other. It's not just physical. It's emotional. It's about trust, connection, and love. Sarah tilted her head. "Love. I have heard this word before. It is considered important in your culture. But what is it? Jake sighed. This was getting more complicated by the second. It's a deep feeling. It's wanting to be with someone, to care about them more than yourself. Zaira stared at him, silent for a moment. Then, very slowly, she reached forward and placed her hand on Jake's chest. Jake froze. Her touch was ice cold. Strange. Her eyes glowed faintly. Your heart rate has increased. Are you experiencing this love right now? Jake stepped back so fast he nearly tripped. Do you what? No. That's just surprise. Shock. You caught me off guard. Zaira blinked. Fascinating. I must study this further. Jake groaned inwardly. He had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. And deep above in space, the alien council watched closely. The test had begun. The shock and the explanation. Jake Carter felt like he had just walked into a trap, one he didn't even see coming. The beautiful but unnervingly analytical alien woman, Zaira, stood before him, studying his every movement. He was used to diplomatic negotiations, long speeches, and political strategies, but explaining human romance and reproduction to an emotionless alien scientist, that was a whole new level of awkward. He took a deep breath. Listen, Zaira, reproduction is, well, it's not just about making babies. Zaira tilted her head, her glowing violet eyes unblinking. Then what is its purpose? Jake rubbed his temples. It's about connection, love, relationships. Zaira's lips parted slightly, like she was processing something. This concept of love again. It is a common theme in human literature, music, and culture. Yet, its definition remains unclear. Jake let out a nervous chuckle. Yeah, welcome to being human. Zaira was silent for a moment. Then she leaned in closer. If love is essential for reproduction, does this mean every human couple is in love before they reproduce? Jake almost choked. Oh, no, not exactly. Then explain the logical sequence. What factors lead to love? And how does one determine an appropriate mate? Jake sighed. There was no escaping this conversation. Well, it's different for everyone. Some people fall in love because of physical attraction. Others because of shared interests, some because of time spent together. It's complicated. Zaira raised a silver eyebrow. Illogical. In our species, partners are chosen based on genetic compatibility. Your process appears inefficient. Jake laughed. Yeah, well, humans aren't exactly known for being efficient in love. It's messy, emotional, sometimes painful. Painful. Zaira's glowing eyes narrowed. Why would humans engage in an action that leads to suffering? Jake hesitated. How could he explain heartbreak to someone who had never felt emotion before? It's not just about pain. Love is also beautiful. It makes life worth living. People take risks because the reward is greater than the pain. Zaira fell into deep thought, her glowing gaze scanning Jake's face as if analyzing every word, every emotion behind it. Interesting. So love is an emotional gamble, where the outcome is unpredictable. Jake nodded. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Zaira suddenly stepped forward, closing the space between them way too fast. Jake stiffened as she peered into his eyes. Then I would like to experience this. Jake's brain short-circuited. What? I wish to engage in this emotional experiment. If I am to understand humans, I must experience love. I have selected you as my test subject. Jake's entire body locked up. His heart pounded in his chest. Will you wait? You can't just pick someone like that. Love doesn't work like an experiment. Zaira frowned. Why not? Jake groaned. Because love happens naturally. You don't just declare a test subject and force it to happen. Zaira's eyes flashed. Then we shall allow it to happen naturally. What is the first step? Jake wanted to run. This was a diplomatic nightmare waiting to happen. Meanwhile, On the alien mothership, deep in orbit above Earth, inside a massive floating citadel of light and metal, a group of alien officials sat around a circular table, watching a holographic projection of Syra and Jake's conversation. Their leader, High Counselor Vena, narrowed her glowing white eyes. She is becoming too involved. This was not part of the directive. Another official, his skin shimmering in waves of blue, tapped his long fingers on the table. Her emotions are activating. It is dangerous. Humans have this effect. They infect others with their emotions. If she continues, she may be compromised. Vena's gaze hardened. Monitor her closely. If she strays too far, we will intervene. The council members silently agreed, watching as Kyra, one of their finest scientists, began to feel. Back on Earth, the first date, Jake should have refused. He should have walked away. But somehow he found himself sitting across from Sarah in a small restaurant, watching as she analyzed everything with the intensity of a scientist observing a rare species. The restaurant was dimly lit, warm, and filled with the soft hum of human conversation. A perfect setting for a date, if it weren't a complete disaster. Zyra's gaze locked onto the plate of spaghetti before her. Human sustenance-sharing rituals. They are common in bonding, correct? Jake sighed. It's called having dinner together. It's a normal thing couples do. Zyra nodded. Then, without hesitation, she picked up a strand of spaghetti with her fingers and lifted it toward Jake's mouth. Jake jerked back. Whoa, what are you doing? The Lady and the Tramp effect. I wish to observe its results. Jake rubbed his temples. It's not a science experiment. You don't force a romantic moment. It just happens naturally. Zyra frowned, setting the spaghetti down. Human romance is excessively complex. Jake laughed. Tell me about it. As the night continued, Jake noticed something strange. At first, Syra had been robotic, analyzing everything like a scientist. But slowly, she started reacting differently. She didn't just observe laughter. She actually laughed at one of Jake's dumb jokes. She didn't just examine human gestures. She subconsciously mimicked them. And for the first time since they met, her glowing violet eyes softened. Meanwhile, in the shadows, across the street, two shadowy figures sat inside a black vehicle, watching Jake and Syra through high-tech binoculars. One of them, a grizzled man with a scar down his cheek, lowered the binoculars. The alien is getting too close to him. His partner, a woman with sharp green eyes, frowned. We can't let that happen. The more they connect, the more dangerous it gets. The man nodded. If she stays on Earth long enough, she won't be one of them anymore. He reached for his communicator. Prepare for extraction. We're taking the alien. Tonight. The experiment. Date night. The soft hum of the restaurant faded as Jake Carter found himself trapped in the strangest situation of his life. Across from him sat Syra, an alien scientist who had no concept of human relationships, but was determined to experience them firsthand. She wasn't just observing. She was testing. And Jake, he was the unlucky test subject. He sighed, running a hand through his hair as Kyra meticulously examined the dessert menu like it contained the secrets of the universe. Romantic bonding rituals often include the sharing of sweet food, correct? I read it. Tapping a slender finger against the menu. Jake nodded slowly. Yeah, it's called dessert. People like to end a date with something sweet. Zyra's violet eyes gleamed. Then let us partake. I wish to assess its emotional impact. Jake sighed. This was not how normal dates worked. The waiter approached, clearly flustered by Syra's stunning yet eerie presence. What can I get you? Zyra pointed at the most expensive dessert on the menu. This, the lava chocolate souffle. Jake raised an eyebrow. You don't even know if you like chocolate. Zyra's expression remained neutral. That is why we must test it. Jake groaned. At this point, She was treating their date like a full-blown science experiment. Above Earth, the alien council watches. Far above, inside the orbiting mothership, a group of high-ranking aliens monitored Xyra's actions. Their leader, High Counselor Vena, watched with narrowed eyes. Her emotional activity is increasing. She is engaging in human behavior. A blue-skinned officer beside her frowned. She was sent to study them, not to become one of them. If this continues, we may lose her. Vena's eyes darkened. We cannot allow that to happen. Begin preparations for intervention. Back on Earth, a desert disaster. Back at the restaurant, the lava chocolate souffle arrived. Xyra stared at the steaming, molten dessert as if it were a newly discovered alien species. Jake chuckled. It's just chocolate. Try it. She took a spoon, scooped up a small bite, and placed it in her mouth. Her expression didn't change. For a moment, she simply sat there, blinking. Then, something incredible happened. Xyra's glowing eyes widened. Her fingers trembled slightly as she placed the spoon down with the utmost precision. Jake raised an eyebrow. You okay?" Xyra slowly turned to him. "This is the most extraordinary sensation I have ever experienced." Jake laughed. "It's chocolate, not enlightenment." But Xyra was genuinely affected. For the first time, she wasn't just observing human culture, she was feeling it. Jake smirked. "Told you humans know what we're doing." Xyra sat back, her expression unreadable. But deep in her eyes, something flickered, something Jake couldn't quite place. Meanwhile, the attack begins. Across the street, the black vehicle remained parked in the shadows. Inside, the two shadowy agents had their eyes locked on Xyra and Jake. The scared man tapped his earpiece. "She's adapting too fast. If we wait any longer, we'll lose our chance." The woman beside him nodded grimly. "Orders are clear. We take the alien. Tonight." She pulled out a sleek, futuristic-looking tranquilizer gun, adjusting the setting. "Prepare for extraction. A walk in the night." After the restaurant, Jake and Xyra walked along the quiet city streets. The night air was crisp, and neon lights reflected off the wet pavement. Xyra walked with perfect posture, scanning everything with quiet fascination. Jake shoved his hands in his pockets, glancing at her. "So, how was your first date?" Xyra turned to him, her silver hair glistening under the city lights. "It was illuminating." Jake smirked. "Good answer." Xyra studied him. "Your heart rate has been elevated since we met. Is this a sign of attraction?" Jake coughed. "What? No, it's just, look, you can't just measure attraction with science." Xyra tilted her head. "Then how does one confirm its existence?" Jake hesitated. "You just feel it." Xyra frowned slightly. "Illogical. Feelings are unreliable data points." Jake sighed. "That's love for you." Xyra remained silent for a moment, then slowly stepped closer. Jake's breath hitched as she raised a hand and placed it gently against his chest. "Strange. I feel something too." Jake froze. Xyra's fingers were ice cold, but the touch was strangely gentle. Her glowing violet eyes searched his. "Is this attraction?" Jake swallowed hard. His mind screamed at him to back away, but something in Xyra's expression stopped him. For the first time, she didn't look like a detached scientist. She looked confused, vulnerable, almost human. But before Jake could say anything, a loud explosion ripped through the air. The kidnapping. The world erupted into chaos. A black van skidded onto the sidewalk, tires screeching. Armed figures in tactical gear leaped out, guns raised. "Get down," Jake yelled, grabbing Xyra's wrist and pulling her behind him. But the agents moved too fast. A dart flew through the air, striking Xyra's neck. Her eyes widened in shock. "Jake." Her voice slurred as her legs gave out. Jake caught her before she hit the ground. "Target acquired. Move in. One of the agents barked. Jake's rage exploded. "You're not taking her." He lunged, swinging a fist at the nearest agent. The man dodged effortlessly, slamming a baton into Jake's ribs. Pain shot through him, but he didn't let go of Syra. More agents rushed forward. Jake fought desperately, but they were trained, outnumbering him 5-1. He was helpless as Syra's unconscious body was ripped from his arms. "No!" Jake roared, struggling against the men holding him back. The last thing he saw was Tyra's glowing violet eyes flickering weakly before she was thrown into the van and driven away into the darkness. Forbidden emotions and first kiss. Captured. Syra's consciousness flickered in and out, her body paralyzed by the tranquilizer coursing through her veins. She could feel the motion. She was inside a vehicle, moving fast. She tried to speak, but her lips wouldn't move. Her body felt heavy, her limbs unresponsive. Vital signs normal. "The alien is stable," a voice said nearby. Syra's mind struggled to process the situation. She was being taken, but by whom? Not her own people. No, these were humans. Through half-lidded eyes, she glimpsed the figures around her. They were wearing black tactical gear, human-made armor, and weapons unlike anything she had seen on public Earth broadcasts. Private military, unaffiliated with the government. Approaching base, prep containment. Another voice answered, "We need to act fast. If her people detect this, we'll be wiped out before morning." Zyra's heart pounded. Her people. If they found out she had been compromised, they wouldn't negotiate. They wouldn't ask questions. They would erase everything in their way, including Earth. Jake's desperate hunt. Jake Carter's knuckles were bloody, his head spinning from the beating he took. The agents had left him bruised and unconscious in an alley, but now he was awake, and he was furious. Stumbling forward, he reached for his phone with shaky fingers, dialing the only person he could trust, Detective Adrian Vega. The phone rang twice before a deep, tired voice answered. "Carter, why are you calling me yet?" "They took her." Jake's voice was raw with rage. "Some Black Ops guys. They took Syra. They drugged her, threw her in a van, and—" Vega's tone hardened instantly. "Where? Who?" Jake gritted his teeth. "I don't know who, but they weren't government. Too smooth, too trained. I need to find her." A long pause. Then, "Meet me in 20 minutes. Bring a weapon. We're getting her back." Jake didn't hesitate. He was going to war. Inside the facility, Zyra's awakening. Cold. Metal restraints wrapped around Syra's wrists and ankles, securing her to an advanced containment chair inside a dimly lit interrogation room. Bright white lights buzzed above. The walls were sterile, reinforced with something far beyond human technology, a signal that these people weren't just any human faction. They had resources. Zyra's body was still sluggish from the sedative, but her mind was coming back online. She assessed her situation, measuring all possible escape routes in seconds. "She's awake." A voice. A human woman stepped into view, her green eyes sharp as a blade. She was tall, dressed in a black tactical uniform, her posture rigid with control. Behind her stood the scared man, the same one from the restaurant stakeout. "Zira of the Volteri Collective," the woman said smoothly. "We have questions." Syra's gaze flickered to the insignia on the woman's uniform. She recognized it. Black Sun, a human shadow organization that operated outside of government control. Their mission: to prepare for extraterrestrial threats. Zyra remained silent. The woman smirked. "Oh, don't worry. You're not a prisoner. You're a guest." Zyra tilted her head. "Guests are not restrained." The scared man chuckled darkly. "You're not exactly normal company, lady." The woman crossed her arms. "Let's make this simple. What are your people planning? Is this infiltration? Are you here to manipulate human minds? Because we've seen the signs. You're adapting too fast. That's not natural. Zaira's expression didn't change. You fear emotions. The woman's jaw tightened. We fear what happens when an advanced species starts feeling things they were never meant to feel. That makes you unpredictable. And unpredictability is dangerous. Zaira's fingers curled against the metal restraints. They were afraid. Not of her strength, not of her technology. They were afraid that she was becoming one of them. A human. And that meant her own people would fear the same. She was caught between two worlds, and both saw her as a threat. For the first time in her life, Zaira felt something new. Isolation. And deep within that isolation, rage. Jake's infiltration. The Black Sun compound was heavily guarded. But Jake Carter didn't care. With Adrian Vega beside him, an ex-military, off-the-books detective who knew how to break into places like this, they had one goal: get Zaira out. They crouched behind a ridge, overlooking the facility from the darkness. Vega loaded his silenced pistol. We go in quiet. You sure about this? The second we start, there's no turning back. Jake's jaw clenched. She's in there because of me. I'm getting her out. Vega smirked. I like your attitude. Let's move. They slipped through the perimeter, neutralizing guards silently, moving like shadows. Jake's heart pounded as they reached the facility's interior. Room 47. An IRA holding cell. Vega picked the lock. The door clicked open. Jake stepped inside. And there she was, strapped to a metal chair, her silver hair messily draped over her face, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dark. His chest tightened. She looked up. Jake. His breath hitched. I'm getting you out of here. First kiss and the emotional awakening. As Jake freed her restraints, the alarm blared. They were discovered. Heavy boots stormed down the hall, shouts ringing through the facility. They're here. Stop them. Jake grabbed Zaira's hand. Can you run? Zaira took a shaky step forward. Her legs were weak, but she gritted her teeth. I will not be captured again. Jake smirked. That's the spirit. Let's. Gunfire. A bullet whizzed past, missing Zaira by an inch. Without thinking, Jake grabbed her and pulled her against him. Zaira's eyes widened, their faces inches apart. Her breath hitched. Something overwhelmed her, something deep, powerful, and utterly uncontrollable. Jake felt it too. His fingers tightened around her waist, his heart hammering. She wasn't just an experiment anymore. She was real. And before either of them could think, Zaira closed the gap. Their lips met, and in that moment, her heart exploded with emotion. Fear, want, confusion, desire. For the first time in her life, Zaira felt, and she never wanted to stop. The consequences and the mission reveal. Escape into the night. Zaira's lips still tingled, her entire body overwhelmed by the unfamiliar but intoxicating rush of human emotion. Jake's arms remained around her, their bodies pressed close in the dimly lit corridor. Gunfire rattled behind them. Move. Now. Vega barked, snapping them both back to reality. Jake grabbed Zaira's hand, yanking her forward as bullets tore through the walls behind them. Vega fired back, taking down two of the Black Sun operatives as they sprinted down the metallic hallway. Zaira's mind raced. Her heart pounded erratically, an organ she had always known she had but never truly felt before. Jake led her through the dark corridors, his grip tight, protective. She could sense his adrenaline, his desperation to get her out. Exits ahead, Vega shouted. A heavy metal blast door loomed in front of them, a flashing red low-CKD sign glowing beside it. I'll get it open. Cover me, Vega yelled, pulling out a hacking device. Zaira and Jake spun around, bracing for the onslaught of Black Sun forces. The first wave of elite soldiers charged down the corridor, clad in high-tech combat armor, their rifles gleaming under the cold fluorescent lights. Jake raised his pistol, firing. Zaira, still breathless from the strange sensation of the kiss, barely processed the chaos. Then, something shifted inside her. A powerful primal instinct surged through her body. Her species had no combat training. There was no need. They relied on intelligence, strategy, technology. But deep inside her genetics lay a hidden potential, one even she didn't understand. Her body moved on its own. As the first soldier lunged forward, she ducked low, her reflexes unnaturally sharp, faster than any human reaction time. Before the soldier could fire, she grabbed his arm, twisted. Cracky. The soldier collapsed, his rifle clattering to the ground. Jake's eyes widened. Okay, remind me not to piss you off. Zaira didn't respond. She was changing. But she didn't have time to process it. Vega cursed. Damn it, the system's fighting back. Stall them. More operatives poured in. Jake fired, taking out another. Zaira, acting purely on instinct, grabbed a fallen soldier's weapon and fired back with pinpoint accuracy, even though she had never held a human gun before. Jake spared a quick glance at her, his shock evident. Are you sure you've never done this before? Zaira breathed heavily, gripping the weapon tightly. I do not know. Her body was adapting. Too fast. Something inside her was awakening. Got it. Vega shouted as the blast door hissed open. Move. Move. They sprinted through just as a grenade exploded behind them, shaking the entire facility. The cold night air hit them like a wave, the darkness of the outside world welcoming them as they stumbled into the back streets. A black SUV skidded to a stop, Vega's escape vehicle. They piled in, and Vega floored the gas. As the facility vanished into the distance, Zaira looked at Jake. Something had changed between them, and she didn't know what it meant. The galactic fallout. The truth is revealed. Far above Earth, the Valtari mothership loomed, a silent monolith among the stars. Inside, the High Council of the Valtari Collective watched the footage of Zaira's actions on Earth. They had seen everything. Her rapid adaptation. Her emotional corruption. The kiss. The room was deathly silent. Then, Counselor Vena spoke. She has been compromised. A ripple of tension passed through the council. Her neural structure has changed. Her body is adapting to human emotions at an accelerated rate. She is no longer one of us, another council member added, his tone cold. Vena's eyes burned with something close to disgust. She has broken the fundamental laws of our species. Emotions lead to war, destruction, chaos. If she has truly connected with a human, then she is no longer our concern. Another counselor hesitated. What do we do? Vena's expression darkened. We cannot allow an emotional Valtari to exist. We will erase her. A final command was given. Prepare the fleet. Earth will surrender her, or burn. On Earth, the hidden message. Zaira sat in the dim light of Vega's hideout, her mind still reeling. She had spent her entire life believing her people were superior, logical, above the chaos of human emotion. And yet, she had felt things tonight that she had never experienced before. And now, she had killed for the first time. She had never been designed for combat. Yet when the moment came, her body had acted on its own. Why? What was she becoming? You okay? Jake's voice cut through her thoughts. She turned to him, and for the first time, she didn't see him as just an experiment. He was her first connection, her first everything. And that terrified her. Jake, she whispered, I do not know what is happening to me. He hesitated, then reached out, gently brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Then we figure it out, together. Zaira's heart ached at his words. A strange, alien ache that she didn't fully understand. Then, a soft beeping sound filled the room. Zaira's blood froze. The Valtari had sent a message. She stepped forward, pressing a glowing icon on her wrist device. A holographic projection appeared. High Counselor Vena's face. Cold. Unforgiving. Zira of the Valteri Collective. The message began, her voice echoing through the room. You have defied the laws of our people. You have bonded with a human. You have allowed yourself to be corrupted. Zaira's breathing shallowed. You are no longer Valteri. You are a threat. The message paused. Then, you have 24 hours to surrender, or Earth will be annihilated. The message cut out. Silence filled the room. Jake stood frozen, his fists clenching. They're coming for you. Zaira turned to him, her eyes dark with emotion. No, Jake. Her voice was steady. They're coming for all of us. Zaira's rebellion, and the great escape, the ultimatum. A cold silence filled the dimly lit safe house. The holographic message had vanished, but its warning still echoed in their minds. 24 hours. If Zaira did not surrender herself, Earth would burn. Jake clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. His heart pounded, anger coiling in his chest like a storm. Zaira sat across from him, unmoving. Her glowing violet eyes stared blankly ahead, her hands clasped together. Vega was the first to break the silence. So, what's the plan? Jake turned to him. What do you mean, what's the plan? We fight. We don't let them take her. Vega exhaled. We're talking about an intergalactic war. Carter, Earth isn't ready for this. The Valteri could wipe us out before breakfast. Jake refused to accept that. His gaze snapped to Zaira. You're not actually thinking of going back, are you? Hidera lifted her eyes to his. For the first time, he saw something human in her expression. Doubt, fear, and something deeper, conflict. I do not wish to go back, she said quietly. But if I do not, millions will die. Jake shook his head. No, we're not letting that happen. There has to be another way. Vega rubbed his temples. We have less than a day to figure it out, or Earth's gonna have a crater where its cities used to be. Zaira took a deep breath. Then her expression hardened. There is another way. But it is dangerous. Jake met her gaze. I don't care. Tell me. Zaira stood. We must take the fight to them. The plan. A suicide mission. Jake and Vega listened as Tyra outlined the impossible. The Valteri mothership, the command center of their fleet, was in high orbit over Earth, its shields impenetrable. But Zaira knew something no human did, a weak point in the ship's security system. There is a backdoor frequency, an emergency failsafe that can be accessed from within the ship. If we infiltrate the mothership and disable its command protocols, we can shut down their weapons and force them to negotiate. Vega let out a low whistle, breaking into the most advanced alien warship in the galaxy. Easy. We'll be back in time for coffee. Jake ignored the sarcasm. How do we get up there? Zaira hesitated. I can call for a transport. But it will require deception. They will believe I am surrendering. Jake immediately hated the plan. No way. You're not just handing yourself over. That's suicide. Zaira's gaze didn't waver. It is the only way. I must go willingly. If I resist, they will not bring me aboard. They will destroy Earth from orbit. Jake's stomach twisted. Every instinct in him screamed no. But she was right. This was the only chance they had. He swallowed hard. All right, but we do this together, no matter what. Zaira's expression softened. Together. The betrayal. Hours later, the Valteri dropship descended from the sky. Zaira stood in the center of an abandoned field, her hands at her sides. The wind whipped her silver hair around her face as the massive black vessel hovered above, its eerie blue lights illuminating the ground. Jake and Vega were hidden nearby, crouched behind wreckage from an old, abandoned industrial site. The ship's doors slid open, and a group of Valteri soldiers emerged, their forms elegant yet intimidating. Their silver armor gleamed under the moonlight. Then, Counselor Vena stepped forward, her piercing white eyes locked onto Xyra. "You have chosen wisely." Xyra's voice was calm but unwavering. "I will come with you, but Earth is not your enemy." Vena's expression did not change. "We will decide that once you are back where you belong." Xyra cast one last glance toward Jake. A silent message passed between them. "Stick to the plan." She stepped forward. The moment she crossed into the ship, Jake and Vega struck. Vega fired first, a well-placed sniper shot disabling one of the ship's external cannons. Jake charged forward, his weapon drawn, firing at the soldiers before they could react. Xyra sprang into action, seizing a rifle from a stunned Volteri warrior and taking down two more in the blink of an eye. Alarms blared. The ship's systems went into lockdown. "We're in. Move," Jake yelled as he and Vega bolted up the ramp, slamming the doors shut behind them. They were on the mothership, and there was no turning back. The battle for the mothership. The corridors of the Volteri warship were sleek, sterile, and crawling with armed guards. The moment Jake and Vega entered, they were met with a hail of laser fire. "Damn it, I thought you said this was gonna be quiet," Vega yelled as he ducked behind cover. Jake fired back, taking out a soldier. "Yeah, well, plans change." Xyra moved like lightning, weaving through the chaos, her body responding with inhuman precision. She disarmed two warriors effortlessly, using their own weapons against them. But the clock was ticking. They had minutes before the Volteri High Command overrode the ship's lockdown and executed a full-scale planetary assault. Xyra's voice was urgent. "We need to reach the control chamber. Follow me." They sprinted down the corridor, taking out guards as they went. Then, as they turned the final corner, Vena stood waiting. She was alone, her hands clasped behind her back. And she was smiling. "You truly believe you can fight your way through logic itself," she said coldly. Xyra raised her weapon. "I am not fighting logic. I am fighting tyranny." Vena shook her head. "You have already lost. You do not see it yet, but you will." With a simple wave of her hand, the walls came alive. Dozens of Volteri warriors stepped forward, weapons raised. Jake's heart sank. They were surrounded. Vena's gaze darkened. "Surrender now, and Earth will be spared. Resist, and I will make you watch as we reduce it to ash." Xyra's hand tightened on her weapon. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, she turned to Jake, and without a word, she kissed him. A deep, fierce kiss, filled with everything she had no words for. And then, she whispered against his lips, "Run." Before he could react, she stepped forward, alone, her arms raised in surrender. Vena's eyes narrowed. Wise choice. Jake's blood boiled. "Xyra, no." She turned to him, her violet eyes soft with emotion. "Go, Jake. I will end this, my way." The last thing Jake saw was the love in her gaze. Before the doors slammed shut between them, the final stand and love wins. Captured, but not defeated. Xyra stood motionless, her hands still raised in surrender. The cold grip of Volteri soldiers clamped around her arms as they restrained her, locking her into energy cuffs that bound her body in place. Jake was gone. Vega was gone. She was alone. Vena stepped forward, her white eyes gleaming with cold victory. "You made the right decision, Xyra. This ends now." Xyra said nothing, but deep inside her, she was calculating. This wasn't the end. Not yet. Jake's reckless gamble. On the lower levels of the mothership, Jake and Vega had been cornered. Guards swarmed from all sides, their sleek, silver armor glowing ominously in the dim corridors. Jake's gun clicked empty. Vega gritted his teeth. "We're screwed." Jake wasn't listening. His mind was elsewhere. Xyra was still up there, and she was not going to die alone. "No, "We're not done yet," Jake growled. Vega shot him an incredulous look. "Unless you've got a spaceship hidden in your jacket, we are very much done." Jake's eyes burned with determination. "We need to get to the command core." Vega blinked. "That's suicide." Jake clenched his fists. "Then let's die trying." A grand deception. Meanwhile, Syra was being escorted toward the bridge of the mothership, where the final command would be given to annihilate Earth. Vena walked beside her, speaking as though she were a mother scolding a foolish child. "I warned you, Syra. Emotions are a virus. They consume the mind, make it weak. You are proof of this corruption." Syra's voice was calm, but sharp as a blade. "You fear emotions because you do not understand them." Vena stopped walking. Her face twisted in a rare expression. "Rage. I understand them well enough. I watched as emotions destroy our ancestors, fueled wars, tore our kind apart. I will not allow it to happen again." Sarah stared at her. "Then why do you hate me? Why do you feel anger?" Vena's expression froze. For the first time, she had no answer. Zyra took a step closer. "You feel emotions too. You just refuse to acknowledge them." Vena's fists clenched. "It does not matter. You are a traitor to your species. Earth will burn, and you will watch as I erase everything you care about." But Zyra's lips curled slightly, because she had already won. Jake's last stand. Jake and Vega stormed through the ship, heading straight for the command core, the central hub that controlled the fleet's entire network. They blasted through security doors, dodged incoming fire, and fought like men who had nothing left to lose. By the time they reached the command core, alarms screamed through the ship. Vega hacked into the main system, his fingers flying across the alien interface. "I can shut down their weapons, but we won't have much time," Vega called. Jake wiped blood from his lip. "Do it." Then, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Jake's stomach plummeted. He grabbed Vega's wrist. "What was that?" Vega's face turned white. "They've already fired on Earth. The fleet has begun the invasion." Jake's body turned ice cold. "We're out of time." Styra's true plan. Back on the bridge, Styra stood as the massive fleet positioned itself over Earth, weapons charged. This was the moment. She had calculated everything. She turned to Vena, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "Do you know why I surrendered?" Softly, Vena smirked. "Because you had no choice." Zyra's lips curved into a dangerous smile. "No, because I needed to be here." And then, she struck. Zyra lunged forward, lightning fast, grabbing the nearest guard's wrist and twisting. Hard. Crack. The guard collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor. Before the others could react, Zyra's hands glowed with energy, and she unleashed a pulse wave that sent every soldier flying backward. Vena barely had time to register what was happening before Zyra was in front of her, staring her down. "You think emotions make us weak." Zyra's voice shook the room. "But you are wrong. They make us powerful. And I will show you why." With a single motion, she pressed her hand against the ship's central neural interface and hacked into the entire fleet. The turning point. In the command core, Vega suddenly shouted, "Systems are crashing. Something's happening." Jake's heart jumped. "It's her. She's taking over." Across the entire Valtteri Armada, ships froze in place. Weapons powered down. Battle systems shut off. On the bridge, Vena staggered back in horror. What are you doing?" Zyra closed her eyes, her voice echoing across the fleet. "To all Valtteri forces, stand down. You are no longer under the control of fear." The fleet obeyed. Jake's breath hitched. She did it. Zyra had rewritten the very laws of her people, not through war, but through something more powerful. Emotion, hope, and love. The final choice. Vena collapsed to her knees. Her army, her entire civilization, had just defied her. She looked up at Tyra, eyes burning. "You have doomed us. You think love will save you. It will destroy everything." Sarah knelt down, staring at her former leader. "No, it will rebuild everything." Vena let out a hollow laugh. "You are not Voltaire anymore." Zaira smiled softly. "I know. I am something more." And with that, she turned. Her mission was complete, but she had one more reason to stay. Love wins. Minutes later, Jake burst into the bridge. His breath caught in his throat when he saw her standing there, silver hair flowing, glowing like a being of pure light. She turned. Their eyes met. And Jake knew. Zaira was no longer just an alien scientist. She was home. "Jake," she whispered. Without a word, he crossed the distance and kissed her. A deep, desperate kiss, filled with everything they had fought for. A kiss that meant one thing. They had won. Together. Epilogue. A new beginning. Earth was saved. The Voltaire, under new leadership, had entered an era of peace with humanity. And as Jake and Cyrus stood together, staring at the stars, they knew this was only the beginning of something far greater than war, something worth fighting for, something called love.